wash pot never boils. I guess the blinking light never stops.
It is not blinking anymore. We are live.
Ah, okay. So, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Looks like it's 1:08. Will you please rise if you're able and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Andrew Benson. Ruth Groff. Here. Bronwyn Losey. Here. Joseph Wetmore.
Here.
Here. I'd like, if it's okay with the board, to move the agenda around a little bit because Steve Kushner has a window here about an hour. And if it's okay with everyone else, that we can move him ahead. Item number 5, the contract discussions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I have copies of the communications, if you don't have one. These were given out last time, but we can hand them out again, make sure everyone has one.
Sure.
Did you make a copy for me so I could find it?
I did.
Oh, that would be great.
I've got an extra also, because I had mine from last time.
Thank you.
Just a side note, if you could talk more clearly into the microphone, that way Steve will have a better hearing.
Ready? We can have a conversation?
Okay, so she needs a second one also. Did she
She
get
has-
both copies?
Cool.
There's
Bronwyn
a
gave me
big
2
copy and a
things.
thin copy.
Yep. Same as last time, yeah?
Correct.
Yep. I brought last time, so what's that?
All right. Does anyone else need a copy?
I have mine. Thank you.
Ruth, you need yours?
No, you gave me some. Fine.
Okay, you have 2?
Yes,
All right, good.
thin and thick.
Thin and thick. Okay,
April 25th and April 17th.
that's helpful. Yes. Okay, Steve, you want to start? One of the things, we went over the analysis of the residential center and the billing. And if you could walk us through what the numbers are and then what the final number is of your proposal, please?
Sure. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, excellent. So, through the course of the project, when I started off, DJ had contacted me about could we do another analysis similar to what we had done for the highway department. We were already somewhat familiar with the site of the Lansing Residential Center because we had looked at the very corner piece, kind of north of the creek, as a potential site for the highway department. And, is it something that could fit? At the time that we looked at that, we had kind of taken it off the table. We had run a quick check with DEC reports and found that there was known contamination in the soils in that area based on whatever had happened previously at the site. So we started moving forward with the project, planned it out, provided information for a contract. And it was about that time that there was some lack of understanding on my part of just how much was on the site, right? When we had first talked about it, it was, could you do something for this price? Sure, but there were significantly more buildings on the site than we had understood there to be. And each one of them, this is the real crux of the proposal. Each one of them had different materials, different structures that required testing for environmental hazards, hazardous materials, asbestos, lead, PCBs. Those are really the key components. As they were built in different eras, they were added at different times to the site, had different testing requirements. We couldn't assume that something in one building would apply to all the buildings. So before we had really gotten too far underway, I had a conversation to say that we thought the scope was beyond what the $40,000 could handle. And in general, we were instructed, again, it was just a conversation when we were out there talking about the highway department, it'll have to go back to the board, but let's keep going, let's figure out exactly how much it's going to take, and then we can try to figure out where we are. So from that, what's included in the documents in front of you is a description of, the chart explains Bergman's efforts, right? Our labor efforts to go out, to review the conditions that were out there, to put together the report, to make the recommendation, here's what you could use the site for, here's why it may not make sense as a landlord to get involved in a site that you don't have a known tenant for, things of that nature. So, you know, again, we originally thought it was about $40,000. We expended $61,000 of effort, Bergman labor, trying to get out and put together this report. The big thing in addition to that is that through some of the requirements, right, it took a couple of days to get through all the buildings, to go through them thoroughly, so we did have an overnight stay for a couple people, so they could spend all day one day and all day the next day, without a second day of travel. There were some reimbursable expenses for Bergman, but the big thing on top of that is all of the testing by Paradigm Environmental Services to check all 13 buildings on the site. So those tallies are in the paragraph below. There was $3,785 of Bergman expenses for, again, travel accommodations, things of that nature, equipment, and then $26,000 of third-party environmental testing by Paradigm, which, trust me, I'm surprised by that number as well. So when we put this all together, we have kind of the extra Bergman effort that we put into it. We have the additional reimbursable expenses component. We sat down together internally and said, what does this relationship with the town of Lansing mean to us? And how can we show that we're in this together? We want to be part of the team. We want to continue to work with you. We obviously want to do the highway department facility, but we'd like to work with you on other things as well. So even though it's shown in the chart, it was mostly shown just to understand the effort. We put in some additional effort, just $41,000 of effort, and we're willing to take that on ourselves and not charge you for that. You know, certainly also with the understanding that you know, the conversation that I had should have gone a little bit further. We know we're going to go over. We should stop working out at that point what we should have done to adjust the contract at that point. So the $21,022.50, the effort beyond the original contract, we are not looking for compensation for it. However, we do need to pay our subs, and that a lot of that does come through this third-party environmental testing by Paradigm. So we are requesting that the reimbursable expenses be paid for a total of $30,320.95.
That's the amount that the town owes you right now?
That is the amount that we're looking for additional compensation for. So the $40,000 contract would still be in place, and then $30,320.95 in addition to that.
So then you'd ask for the $30,320.95 and $12,000 for the balance, is your proposal?
Yes, but only because of the original 40, we've invoiced 28.
Right.
I'm not asking for an additional 12,000. It's just the balance of
The balance,
of
right, but like, we have not given to you, that's the total proposal.
Correct.
Got it.
Correct. We've been paid $28,000.
Okay.
That was very helpful. We were having trouble sorting out what you were actually asking for from this.
Yeah.
It was difficult to enumerate in a document. We
Yeah.
had a completely different chart. It made less sense, if you can believe that. And so we kind of resolved it to this, but I certainly appreciate your time in listening to me and considering this, because it is tricky to understand.
Okay, any other questions for Steve?
No, that helps.
That helped a lot.
Do you want to discuss this?
We'll
later
discuss
then?
it, yeah, we'll discuss it later.
Okay, my friend, the other part is the other contract, right? The additional proposal?
Correct.
All right, let's get right into that real quick. And then we'll let you go to your next meeting. Okay, so go ahead.
Okay, so to date, we have worked with the town and the highway department to assess the current facility. We went through a public engagement process with we created that video, collectively a drone video of the site to try to explain the reasons for what we were doing. Had stopped at the carnival to have a booth there. We did a separate open house, just trying to get the word out to the public as to what was going on and why it was helpful, ultimately to serving every resident through, better highway department facilities. That process then proceeded. I believe you've gone through referendum for the bond amount, which was put together, again, collectively through our cost estimating and, some ideas of soft costs associated with that as well. From that, we have put together our proposal for completing the work, the design work. So this will take place in a series of phases that are typical for a design project. We still have a schematic design. We've so far shown the office space that we know will be mostly highway department. We know that there's a parks and recreation component for pet included in the facility. So far it's been shown as just kind of an open space. We have programming to do to make sure that we understand where things go, what the requirements are, what's going to fit in there. Once we advance through schematic design to make sure that in general the systems are in the right direction, we have the right structural idea and foundations, we will advance to design development. We will make sure that all scope is captured in the documents. We will do additional cost estimates to confirm that we're on budget, and start advancing more of the building systems, the structural system, the mechanical system, the electrical systems, and whatnot. There's a construction documents phase where we put all of this on paper between drawings and specifications to go out to bid for various contractors. That will include all requirements for construction, so they'll be able to put a good price to that. Then we assist through the bidding phase to make sure that the contractors have as much information as possible. We've reviewed their bids to make sure that they're accurate and complete, and make a recommendation for who the town should contract with. On a project such as this, a public works project over $500,000, it's subject to Wick's law, so there will be at least 4 prime contracts: general contractor, mechanical contractor, plumbing contractor, and electrical contractor. There may be more, depending on how we approach it, if there's a separate site contract, things of that nature, or early packages, if that is desired. And we also have a construction administration phase where we make sure that the work of those contractors is in conformance with code and the documents that we've provided, and assist in making sure that that is complete along the way. So those are the basic services that we are including. Now there's some enhanced services, or what I call comprehensive services, based on, looking for the right page, based on the project that we went with, right? We looked at a couple different things. The RFP was about a project that was more of a renovation to the existing building, and it was determined that moving to a new facility was the best way to proceed. That would incur, there's 4 items here. So the first item is commissioning. It is a code and a state requirement, but it's based on the size of the facility. And because of the size of this new facility, we're right over the threshold where we will need to complete a commissioning exercise. This is not something that has to be done by us. That's why we included it as a line item. If it's preferred by the town to go to some other third party to do the commissioning, somebody local, that's certainly your prerogative. But we did include, some costs, some fees for including that service. An additional comprehensive design service would be geotechnical subsurface investigation, making sure that the soils conditions in areas of the new building, areas of the new fuel island, and the relocated salt barn are good enough to bear a building upon it, and to make sure that our foundations are correct based on the soils conditions. Something that does need to happen, but when, depending on which concept had been selected, we may not have had to do as extensive or at all. So that is included. That will be performed by foundation design. We've included the fuel island design. This was 2 parts. One is, even if we had proceeded with the renovation to the building, there were still plans to upgrade the fuel island from what it is today. It would still be above ground tanks. It would still be an above ground dispenser with below grade piping connecting them. It just needs a refresh in a bad way. However, based on the option that was selected, not only do we need to replace it, but we do need to move it slightly in order to maintain circulation on the site. The specifics of fuel island design have certainly, I will tell you from experience, it can go wrong quickly without a good fuel island design or designer on board. Someone who specializes in that area and understands the piping, the connections, how to get power and data to that location, and the right connections within the building. So we've included a sub-consultant for the data service. The last item is the salt barn relocation. Because of the option that was selected, the salt barn needs to be adjusted to work with circulation patterns and where the new building will go. I would say that this one, from a recommendation standpoint, is still a little bit up in the air. From a fee standpoint, I think this is an accurate fee. I've engaged with Hybrid Building Solutions, who has been involved with this salt barn before. At first, we talked about just a relocation. It would mean new foundations and demolishing the old foundations, and then taking the superstructure and the campus hot solution. In talking a little bit more with Hybrid Building Solutions, they may recommend, they want to come out and look again. They may recommend actually just doing a replacement of it completely and selling off the old salt barn to try to recover some funds for the town, or to offset the new barn, because the prices will become close to comparable, and they'll prove that out for you. Much like we did for the concepts on the building and the site, they'll create an evaluation so you can compare relocation versus new building and sell off the old one. But regardless, in having to put it in a new location, there is some additional design for new foundations and the correct specification in order to properly put the new salt barn location together. So those items under basic design services, plus the comprehensive design services that I've talked about, for us, come to a total of $945,000. And I think there's an assumption of $5,000 of reimbursable expenses on top of that. Some things I do want to mention. We've been discussing through the process the potential for a construction manager. This was written around the thought of having a construction manager on board, especially in regard to our construction administration, and input from, for constructability reviews and cost estimates. We have had some internal adjustments. Bergman was merged with another company. They didn't necessarily see the same value in our construction management wing. So I can't tell you what the current status or the future, more importantly, the future status of DJB builds is. So in the meantime, we've carried our numbers with Krista Construction, who we worked with on Arundiquote DPW, which I think some of you may have looked at or considered early on in the process when we were first interviewing for the project. They were the construction manager there. They will be providing our cost estimating services, and constructability reviews during design. And then there's still kind of this lingering soft cost somewhere, whether it's DJB, whether it's our other company, Collier's project leaders, whether it's another construction manager such as Krista. I think there's still a soft cost component there. So when we're thinking about total numbers of the project, there should be an understanding that there's still another number out there somewhere.
What kind of ballpark is that number?
So I would say that that's a range. Again, the timing of the timing of everything that went down in the merger of our companies kind of aligned perfectly with when we were putting the proposal together for this. So what DJB had sent over to me had on-site services 1 day a week, and then would manage construction remotely the rest of the time, putting a lot of it onto the general contractor for the daily on-site coordination. And that was in about $180,000, I want to say.
Pardon me?
180,000.
If it went up a day, that was an additional, fee on top of that. And I think they did provide me, if you wanted somebody on site every day as construction manager, that was more in the $450,000 range. I don't know what other construction managers would provide for a cost. I don't know if there's somebody, one of the things that DJB has done in the past is also found a local experienced contractor to provide more on-site capabilities. So maybe there's a combination of services where somebody who's local, maybe retired, could provide a more cost favorable service in conjunction with someone else. I can't say for sure. I'm trying my best to provide you a good range of understanding.
That's good, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Steve?
Just one quick question. You said the geotechnical subsurface investigation included part of the fuel island and salt barn relocation? That part of that?
Yeah, there's one other component that I did forget about, and that is the septic system. In moving the building, we will need a new septic system. So the geotechnical also, I believe there were 27 boring locations between the building, the salt barn, a couple of the salt barn, and one of the fuel island, just to confirm, soils in those areas. But there are also some test pits, which is kind of a 2-day exercise to dig the pit and then see how much it percolates to test for the septic system. So those two components, the borings and the test pits, are part of the geotechnical number.
So you're saying F through I on this list are things that we could contract with someone else with just as easily as contracting with you?
I certainly hope you would rather go with us, but yes, that is something that another outfit could certainly do.
But what I'm also hearing is that G, H, and I probably would need to go together in either case since they're connected that much?
But I'm sorry, I didn't quite fully hear the question.
So G, H, and I kind of go together as a group, and we would, if we chose someone else, and I'm not suggesting go, I'm just trying to understand what you're telling us. G, H, and I would have to get contracted to one firm because they're kind of connected with each other in terms of what's being done?
No, they're all independent services. They could be contracted with 3 separate groups. And you know, what you don't have out of, going with someone else is kind of somebody managing the process, right? Coordinating and making sure that everybody's talking to each other. But the cell phone relocation is really about just designing the foundations and the specifications for moving the steel and the canvas. They will take the information from the geotechnical investigation, but they aren't dependent. They're not working together on that. Same thing for the fuel island. They're going to design the right connections for the tanks, the piping, the dispensers, the island. The only thing that they're going to take from the geotech is, do they need to create a different size pad that the tanks sit on because the soil conditions are poor below it. So those things all happen independently. We have different subcontractors, subconsultants for all 3 of those.
Okay, thank you. That was very helpful.
Any other questions for Steve?
Yep.
So Steve, my understanding is there's 2 different components to this basically. You have the soft costs, which are the preparations, and then you have the hard costs, which are the actual construction. Is that correct? So this $945,000, that's the soft costs?
That is the design fee soft cost. There are other potential soft costs, as I mentioned, the construction management fee. There's probably some other things that the town will engage with people. So if you have, I think we talked about these a couple times before. If you have someone who runs your networks or security, things of that nature, you're going to want to engage them further for coordination with the design team on those items. That may be part of an existing contract that you already have. It may be an extension of a contract that you already have. But that potential soft cost could be something that comes out of the overall project budget. We did talk about T.G. Miller doing a more enhanced survey than they had done previously. I know as town engineer, I know that they're engaged. I don't know how they're engaged monetarily, right? So if that is something that's part of their term, then maybe it doesn't come out of the soft cost for the project. Maybe that is something that is part of the soft cost of the project. I'm sorry, I don't know that, but I'm just trying to flag things that might fall into that category.
Okay, so we've discussed in the future, and I brought Ruth Groff in this discussion for continuity with our meetings, is that there is the potential for a bond anticipation note, a small amount, I say small amount relatively, that would take care of the first part for $945,000, and then there would also be a bond for the balance of the $15 million for the hard construction. Am I communicating that correctly?
Correct. We talked about the value of 945,000 being in the band. That doesn't mean that the 945,000 will be exactly the services listed on the page. So for example, our construction administration and bidding fees are, just over $200,000. Those things may happen after the bond is all, the balance of the bond is already engaged, so perhaps some of the 945 goes towards, the survey that we just talked about, or some of the other engagements, soft costs of the town. We just decided upon it as a good number. It has reference here, but it's a good number because it stays under $1 million. It'll cover the majority of the design fees and some of those other incidentals. And then the rest of the bond can pay for construction plus the balance of the design fees.
So we're gonna have two different issues. One will be a ban for the soft costs, and then down the road a little bit will be the bond for the actual construction. And can we roll that ban into the bond also, if the interest rates are acceptable? I think we can.
That's my understanding.
Okay, depending on what the interest rates are. We've done in the past where we've actually had bans, multiple renewals, because they were far lower than the actual bond rate at the time of the water district. So that's all good information. Anything else that this board needs to ask you? I guess we have some stuff to digest.
Just quickly, what's the payment schedule on this whole project?
So, I tried to put together the schedule in this proposal just above the compensation numbers, right? So, schematic design, design development, construction documents, into bid documents. That's in the 20-week range, I think is 10, 20, 25-week range. Realistically, we're looking at $650,000 spread out over those 25 weeks, approximately.
So you'd be billing us every month for that month's services?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do is, if the board's okay with this, is let's stop here for now, unless they have other comments or questions. Let us to digest this and maybe bring you back in 2 weeks when we have a board meeting. Does that sound reasonable? That'll be at 6:30 tonight. Will you be available then, 2 weeks from tonight?
I can be.
Good. Can you pencil us in, please? Okay. I think we're all set?
I think so.
Okay, thank you so much, and good luck on your other meetings later today, and thanks for making time for us today. Much appreciated.
Well, thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.
All right, bye-bye. Drive safe.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, food for thought. Let's go into the next one, which is the ARPA funds. So who wants to lead off on this? And before we start, are there resolutions here also that other resolutions?
I don't have any resolutions.
Okay.
I was trying to get one around, I'm sorry, my day was extremely busy. I'm late here because of a car accident hitting one of our...
Yeah, I saw that.
Oh,
So let's circle back when we have a time for the motions and resolutions, but let's get into the ARPA discussion. I want to just take 3 seconds, not 3 seconds, I'm not that young. Just a minute, go get another cup of coffee if you guys have time. Please don't volunteer me for anything.
Hey, has that ever happened to you?
Again.
So what can we volunteer Ed for while he's gone?
Bringing us all coffee.
So Guy, so you're prepared. I'm going to want to know what we
Joe, you're still alive.
Yep, I understand.
Okay.
I want to understand what we need to, what level of commitment we need to do to ensure that these funds don't get taken back. So, do we have to just say we want to spend it on this kind of an item? Do we have to put it as a budget line? Do we have, what exactly do we have to do?
Well, the question presumes that the funds will be taken back.
Indeed,
Okay.
Are we going into executive
And
session or something, or?
The question
not yet.
doesn't answer the question of how, under what conditions, and in what manner they may be taken back.
I
So
understand.
there's no way to answer the question because you'd have to anticipate successfully exactly what federal Congress may do in the next 2 to 72 months respecting unencumbered or unexpended ARPA fund balances, which would be,
Tell me the difference between encumbered and expended.
well, they can say
Technically.
anything that's not committed we're clawing back, or anything that's not spent we're clawing back. How would you know which it is?
Okay,
So to answer your question, you would have to spend it.
Okay, what constitutes a commitment?
However the Congress chooses to define it.
All
But
right, yeah.
under ARPA as written, you have to have the funds committed to a project, i.e. your approval's in place, everything ready to go. So what that will mean and whether or not Congress would change the definition of committed funds would be up to whatever amendment next comes. Because when ARPA was first written, there wasn't a rule about committed funds, there was a spending deadline. Then when they were doing the draft regulations, a whole bunch of people, by people I mean agencies, administrations, sovereign Indian nations, things like that, said, well, wait a minute, if we're doing public improvement projects and they may take 4 years to put in the ground, what does that mean? You don't want us to invest in infrastructure? And they were like, no, you just have to have the funds committed for that project.
Okay.
So if the funds were not used for that project, let's say you earmarked $100,000 to build a new pavilion and outdoor amphitheater at some town park somewhere, right? You committed $100,000 in ARPA funds, but somehow you only needed 70 of it. Then you might have 30 that would be uncommitted and thus either returnable by the ARPA deadline when you do a final closeout of accounting, assuming you have not elected the $10 million one-time loss revenue extension or exception for small communities. Then you would be obligated to return that $30,000 to the federal government. Your concern is more about, forget what happens at the end of ARPA. What if Congress's desire to spend ungodly amounts of money and just hit the printing press whenever they want makes them realize we need to get some of this ARPA money back? And they change the law to capture anything that hasn't been expended as of some random date that they assign to that law. I don't know how you can possibly foresee that happening, or if you see that happening in the next month or two, given the bottleneck that is currently in Congress and the fact that they're technically not in session right now, but for an emergency measure. If you wanted to play it safest, you would expend the funds now, which was exactly what the advice was 2 years ago when the ARPA money was first released. Spend it on a permitted project now.
Right.
And
So,
some communities did and some didn't.
so let's find what permitted projects we have and spend it.
That's where I'm at.
So, could you use it for road maintenance?
Under the lost revenue model, yes.
Could you use it to give it to a food pantry or any other non-profit?
You can do that. You can use it for community support to offset losses or needs based on for-profit and not-for-profit entities. You could actually do a small business program where your for-profit businesses are supported as well. You get trickier the farther you go away from direct command and control in the public interest of the town, because ARPA was really designed to deal with healthcare, what happens in the event of another Clade X lockdown, or Clade X style lockdown. If you know what Clade X is, you'll understand that reference. But it was really geared towards enhancing life, health, and safety in the event of another emergency, whether it's health-related, war-related, earthquake-related, whatever it was. So it does favor things like infrastructure development, water, sewer, things that would enhance safety, quality of life when other services suddenly dry up.
My understanding is that the food pantries have been hit pretty hard because of this pandemic and the aftershocks on that.
There have been other communities in this county that have come to that same conclusion and used some funds for local food pantries, yes. Whether that's happened here or not, or whether that's what this board wants to do with those funds, that would be something you decide.
How much do we have? I think we have like 250,000 left.
That's what was at the last meeting was said.
She may have the answer.
Yes, this is Jennifer, by the way. She is now in the cockpit. So you have the helm.
I mean, congrats.
There's about 265,000 left, just a little over.
265, was that?
Yeah,
65?
and that includes things that you passed resolutions for and kind of committed to, but haven't yet purchased, like the 2 Chevy Silverados.
How much have we sort of committed but not purchased yet? Do you know, out of that 265?
It looks like just under 200,000
Okay.
is committed but not spent.
So I guess whatever money is left over that's clean, not allocated anything, what is that amount?
Yeah.
That's
There we go.
265,000, 641 and 68 cents.
I'm confused.
That's not committed to anything.
No.
No.
She gave you the number of how much we spent, which was 200 and something, and
Right,
this is
because I had in my
what...
mind 400 plus, so that makes
Right.
sense then.
Yes.
So I'm just trying to catch up. I didn't have an extra cup of coffee. So
Take a pull.
so there's 265 left. And,
Well,
that is not
Oh,
true.
wait, there's more.
Yeah.
it's close.
Yeah.
There's probably
Yeah.
about 60-some thousand that's going to be coming out for the case.
That was my question. And like real soon?
And,
Yes.
and
There should be.
I'll get you that number.
Okay, great.
Jen didn't have that number.
Got
I'll
it.
give that to her, so she's aware that that will be.
So we're down to 198,
Right about 200.
around
it sounds
200,
like.
right?
Right about 200.
Yeah.
That we need to figure out how to put somewhere so it doesn't end up disappearing.
And how much
Possibly.
saving do you have that you're going to get reimbursed this year from CHIPS?
100%. We got our chip allocation, they're looking at over 500,000.
But you still want to do more paving this year?
Sure.
So-
I mean, next week we're gonna do section of trade, and then we're gonna help other counties, so, yes.
got-
Always, but, there's a conversation that Pat and I had about, I can't say it. I'll get myself in trouble.
And the Ludlow.
About a thing.
And the Ludlowville land.
About a thing. Say it.
About a thing.
But
Right.
it's something that I want to do for a bit, because we've had some issues with runoff water.
Mhm.
And I've been approached, so I talked to Pat, I should have talked to you, but it's an expenditure that I don't have at this time.
Is this something we need to talk about in confidence? In executive session? Is there something that would be leaked out that would be
Yes,
detrimental?
yes.
Okay.
So we want to
Yes.
table that for a minute?
Yes.
Okay?
Yep.
All right.
Let me pose another question to Guy. If we spend this money on something in the DA fund, it frees up money in the DA fund, but we can only spend it, that freed up money, in the DA fund. We can't move that to another fund, correct? So if we spend this on the A fund items, we have to kind of keep it in the A fund, the money that we freed up. If we spend it in a B fund, we have to keep it in the B fund. If we spend it in a water district fund, the freed up money would have to stay in the water district, correct?
Well, yeah, except for the entities that aren't separate taxing authorities.
So I can move from
Like if
DA
you
to
have a
A.
balance in your DA fund at the end of the year, unencumbered, unused fund balance, I believe that drops back to the general fund.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Right, so it may be at the end of the year that it drops back into the general fund as an unencumbered balance.
Okay.
And I think you probably, if it was excess funds, because you probably could move it out before then, but I defer to someone who's actually knows line item accounting under state comptroller rules.
We wanted to spend this money next year anyway, so that's not an issue.
Right, I mean, that's sort of, I won't use names, but there are some other municipalities in the county that took their ARPA funds and immediately spent them on ARPA-permitted expenditures, and the money that they had raised by tax revenue at the end of that year, which would have been, what, 2019? It dropped into the unencumbered fund balance and therefore created unrestricted use of the funds. Some could call that whitewashing or money laundering, but if the money was used for a lawful purpose, that was the whole point of it, was to compensate for lost revenue during the pandemic, right? And so it probably was a retrospectively wise thing to do, because you don't run into future problems or changes in rules. But, you know, the die could have rolled a different direction and made that an unwise thing to do. You don't know till you get there, and now we're there.
As an example, when we had a surplus, we budgeted $200,000, I believe, for mortgage tax, and we got $529 a few years ago. That extra went into various funds because it was a surplus, right? It goes into the general pot. From there, we moved it over into the DV reserve, which is sales tax generated. You couldn't move it from a DA to a DV, but from the general fund that you could. We also put it for the pathways. We did it for a variety of different things, and the DA also for equipment. I think there was also there for technology. But you spread them out over the various funds, because once it goes to the general pot, then it frees up that money. You can't move it, let's say if you have a surplus in the A, you can't move it over to the DB. You have to wait until it collapses back in at the end of the year to move that money around.
So right,
And what they're doing, what the theory is, which I won't go into, I won't do my rant, have I grown, is that basically what you're doing is you're saying, here's the expense we allocated from DA, we're going to use this money instead, that's going to make the DA bigger. And you can draw your own conclusion, your own semantics as far as what that's called. Just like at the end of the year, we could give, or now with the ARP money, we could give to the food pantry. You wanted X amount for that, or you can do it for somebody else. That's something for food for thought. Okay?
so I guess the question, I'm kind of turning to Pat and Mikey. You got $200,000 worth of something that we're supposed to be spending this year that we can move onto the ARPA plate?
And we can spend quickly.
Yeah, we can spend it, and then we can talk about the list of things people would like to do with it, which I understand. I want to get it committed today.
Infrastructure for me, you said. Pretty easy.
What do you mean? Give me,
Right.
but that's money that, I'm talking about money that we're going to spend out of our tax revenues that we can then, not something
What's
new.
already in our budget.
Already
We can
in our budget.
Spend it on today.
That we can spend it on today to free it up so that we can choose what to spend it on tomorrow.
Right, I mean, I'm budgeted over $500-some thousand for road improvements that hasn't been paid yet.
Okay.
You could take that money out of soon and pay that bill,
Are you getting reimbursed for that from the state?
not all of it, no,
No, just the CHIPS part.
just the chips one.
And how
Okay.
much is that, Mikey?
It's about $500-some thousand, and I have, you know, probably at least another 160 I'm spending on my maintenance side.
Okay.
Okay. So-
We are also going to earmark for some from our discussion with Bergman. Can you use ARPA money for that?
We could.
Well, reserve funds and planning is sketchier.
Okay.
Under reserve funds, you can't put ARPA money there at all, no matter what you elect. There's some things you can't do.
Okay.
In other words, you can't sit on it because it's supposed to be a stimulus. In terms of under the one-time $10 million lost revenue exemption, it's simply line item reporting as to what you spent it on. And if you go into that exemption, you don't have to follow all the rules about each different type of expenditure. And as you may recall, there's like 800 pages of them.
Have we,
But so you don't have to follow all those rules, but you do have to follow the base guidelines of what you're prohibited from doing. So obviously, you can't just hand out raises to yourself. That you're prohibited from using it on that type of thing. You can't just dump it into a reserve fund.
It's not true. Actually, I saw multiple, and I said them that.
We had that discussion.
There was a discussion
Yes.
about that multiple towns gave their employees
Well, I said yourselves, not your employees. Right, you can't use the money for your own benefit, right?
Right.
So there are some rules, but whether you can use it to provide a revenue source for people disparately impacted, the way to produce revenue for employees is technically what's called frontline pay, risk bonus. Which the state embraced, but almost nobody else has, because of course the state's playing with OPM, right? It's not their money. So it's easy to spend. I don't have to worry about $200 difference in a couch if it's not my money I'm spending, so I'll get the nicer couch, right? Well, that's sort of how the state plays.
So-
No offense.
So what is there in the DA or the A fund that we can spend on, so we can increase that amount, so we can get a new air conditioning system or heating system that our employees are just dying on the vine
Yeah,
here?
so-
That if you're on one side of the room, you're in your Hawaiian shirt, and if you're on the other side, you're wearing your mucklucks and your Eskimo outfit,
And have the heater on.
and have the heater on. I mean,
That's all been, they're in the process because things are so bad in this building, like, so we did have a company come in.
Right.
They tried to fix some things, but things are so bad that they had to go back and order more parts. So I don't know when that's gonna be fixed. That is a relatively low number, like maybe $6,000 tops.
Okay.
unless you go to a new system, but my point is to free up that money if we buy
Right.
other
So-
stuff that we have allocated for the A or the
So-
DA
so
right now.
I heard Mikey say 160.
Well, that's out of the DB.
Got it.
I could,
How much do we spend on salt?
I could do the DB or.
You could spend on salt.
Why couldn't you just put your salt order in and purchase it now and then have it delivered
Yeah.
later? Because I'm sure you spend more than that much on salt, period.
And your DA
And that's
fund
also an
is,
area where, depending upon the winter, you may save yourself a lot of budget mods.
Yeah.
well, that's the
Transfers
weak,
later
yeah,
in the year.
that's the
So-
weak link, is the DA fund, by the way.
So,
If
how
you're
much?
looking to spend it quickly, obviously,
Right.
those things are the most beneficial and easiest to put right.
Right, and then we can go through the wish list and figure out.
Well, that frees up
So,
the money.
exactly, so how much can we spend on salt? Should we?
So Mikey, how much can we spend on salt? The whole,
All of it.
all of it? Let it ride, what? Well, that will free up the money, though. if you
Yep.
need to-
I'm okay with that. I want to free up the money, and then we can have a longer discussion through the
Great.
budget process.
There's more.
Guy was pissed because we didn't give him a raise.
He's such a steal. Such a steal. While we're here, though, I would like to consider, I know, Tony, I'm sorry to embarrass you, but she's been such an angel with all the stuff going on here, that we could give her some consideration.
I would agree with that.
Because she's on the front lines.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
she was on the front lines when there was no vaccine, and she was giving out masks, and she was giving out testing kits, and she was delivering food to people and trying to do that stuff. These are these interfaith groups, what I call them, because this has to be something spiritual, that they sometimes go unnoticed, but they're so critical for the people that we don't see every day, the 13% that live below the poverty level. I would like to give an amount to that, so that we can fortify that area, because I know that you're very frugal with your money. And, I'm just saying that if that could happen, I don't know what the amount is. I'll leave it up to this board, but I think she's come to us today because she saw this, and she's given us a consideration. And she's so humble, she won't ask for herself, so I'll be her advocate on this. I think that also would be money well spent, because that would go to areas that we don't see, but she does. And she'll be our advocate for this. So, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a couple, I think that's a great idea. Is the food pantry in our budget? Is that something that we normally allocate municipal funds to? Could we look,
We can do it at budget time.
right, I'm wondering, moving forward, if that's, there are various organizations that support folks in our community that we
do it
support,
for the
and it seems
library,
like.
we give them a stipend. We do
Yeah.
it for the checking of the wall.
Yeah, exactly, Gadabout's what I was
Well, we
thinking.
get something back for that one.
Yeah, but we give them like $7,000.
And
I
they-
understand that.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We also give something back for this.
Yeah.
Well, there's more direct on that one than the other
Yeah.
ones.
Well,
Yeah.
she may also argue that there's a direct impact right there. I'm not going
Yeah, I-
to make this,
Yeah,
we're on the
just-
same page.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like,
So-
we can put that in the budget next year also for an allocation for that.
Yeah, that's my first thought, is like, yeah, let's figure this out now, but this isn't just because of COVID situation. This is a concern, this is a need in our community generally. And then I wonder then if we can do the freeing up the funds now and then figure out what the best way to allocate to different nonprofits in our community is. And if we're, just to take a step back and say, obviously the food pantry, are there other ones that are doing critical work that needs to be happening that maybe we want to distribute some money to and do it a little deliberately? Is just a thought off the top of my head.
I also like your idea of instead of just giving them a lump sum, saying we're going to commit over time and do a regular thing, which I think helps with budgets much more than just a lump sum dumped on
And it
them.
doesn't have to be one or the other. Like, it
Yeah.
could be a lump sum and then
I
also.
think we can do both.
Yeah, yeah.
I think personally, I don't think she should leave here without a commitment from us to give her something now, and then give her something, yes, hallelujah. I would recommend that we tithe, we did 10% of that money to her now, and then we'll talk about that discussion later on that, which is like, what, $19,000?
Sure.
That's entirely up to the board.
Right.
That, like I said, these last 3 years have been brutal for people, and
Not making
she
anything.
just wants to sensitize us to that there are other people out there that are really hurting, and we need to take care of everyone.
Mhm.
And the rest of it could go for salt, and then you guys can decide what you want to do with it when you have that, when that 190 some, or that 100 and, let's see, the 171,000 left is freed up, you guys can decide what you want to, or leave it in the DA and let the salt, so we don't have to do budget models all the time, we'll see. We have time, because then we've protect, to your point, Joe, we protected the money.
Right.
That's what
That's why
I
I
it's an
think
think.
emergency
when we come
meeting,
in,
yeah.
then we can do, this gives us a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can protect it, then you guys can decide how you want to allocate this or not
Mm-hmm.
in the future, if you're comfortable with that.
Well, let me quickly ask, what line number is the salt coming out of?
What line number?
Yes.
DA
DA
one.
5142.
That a boy.
He's a professional.
51,
51,
42, 400.
There it is.
You
Snow
allocated
removal
how much
town.
for that this year?
300.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yep. Snow removal town contractual has $300,900.
I'm not finding it on my
We're
sheet
not saying
here.
on the budget.
What? It's on page 6 online?
Page 6.
Are we on the same?
You will be in a minute.
Oh, good.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Just got done looking at it
42,
that way.
okay, yeah.
So we needed, do we need an exact number, how much we have left?
Equipment, go down on it. I think some-
Left in that line item.
Or can we just say,
In the ARPA money?
order.
Do we have,
I
So
think-
Mike, you have the numbers for the case act.
Oh, great.
So there'd be about 201,957.
So you're saying the
About.
salt is 5142.4?
What, I don't know.
The salt line, the
Was it
line,
dot 4 or dot 2?
.400.
okay.
Okay.
yep,
And have we spent any money on that this year?
Yeah, well, not for the winter coming up.
No, but for January,
Yeah,
In this calendar year?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I have a 1,000 ton left. I put in my OGS bid for 4,000 tons of salt,
mhm.
so I can purchase that.
No, my question is how much of this 300,000 have we spent already?
Oh, Jesus, I don't know, most of it.
I think there's approximately $50,000 left.
So if we were to buy salt now, we'd really be just freeing up 50,000 now, and then some for next year is what we'd be doing.
Right, I mean, you basically finish off, I have 2 accounts I pulled from, but that's one.
Right.
There's the DA 51, 48, something
the other
but you freed up
contractual.
for next year during budget
Well,
time?
that's another
Right.
250,000,
That-
right?
like. Right. So if you're saying you're pre-buying for next year, I've already made the purchase order. And if you allocate the money would then purchase the sulfur.
Got it. And how much is that purchase order for?
That would be.
About?
200 and something.
Oh,
257,680.
okay.
So that surplus would collapse back into the general fund
Right.
at the end of the year. So you still have allocation of that money, how you want to do it at the end of the year. And that gives you time to decide
Yeah.
between, I mean, we're already into 6 months or 5 months, time during budget season where you want to put that money, so you would protect the money. We do it, we do this also when we have more revenue, like I said, mortgage tax, we do it when she has higher fees or whatever. It all collapses back into the big pot.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement on the conceptual, just figuring out the
Right.
details. So if we have that outstanding, and then we say we'll use the ARPA funds to pay for as much of that as we have ARPA funds for,
You'll have a
and then,
surplus at the end of the year, and that'll
then we're all
collapse back
set.
in.
Correct, right.
Okay.
I can come with 1,000 ton to finish off my order,
All right.
From last winter.
Yeah.
I put in a new order for 4,000 ton for the winter coming up.
right, and we can pay it
We
with,
can pay ahead.
And he's got 50,000
Perfect.
left in the line item, plus the 200,000 we're putting in will cover the contract.
Right, or,
Well,
what?
the 50,000 is, that doesn't, that's used, that's 2022 money. Right, what are we in now?
23.
What I'm hearing is that there's
So
over
it's
$200,000 outstanding bill.
Right. So I have 1,000 ton left to salt buy for 2023, right?
Mhm.
We're going to budget for 2024. I've already, because I had to, in April, agreed to my new salt order for the next winter in 2024. Sorry, I had my years off.
Okay.
So, I pre-ordered, knowing in good faith that the board will support that. You guys are saying today, we're going to support that by the tune of 200 and some thousand dollars. I can spend that money, we have the salt,
You can just do it.
budget it, the money collapses back in, you guys,
You won't see the return until 24.
Right.
Right, right.
well,
money is spent.
but if you have that surplus in the DA fund at the end of this year, when
Right.
we close the
Sure.
books,
Collapse
you don't
back.
collapse back
Right,
in,
so-
you don't collapse back into the DA fund and then into the pot of money of the
So
DA fund.
January of '24 is when.
And that'll give you flexibility for those two funds to which you have to do.
Yep.
Because God forbid,
Okay.
we have a November where there's snow in November or December, you get that flexibility, and if there's anything left over, it goes back into that surplus pot.
There you go.
In the meantime, once again, can we give 20,000 to the food pantry, then you can take the other 180,000, you guys can play with that. Does that sound acceptable?
I'm curious what Ruth and Joe think, because I, instinctually, I'm like, yeah, of course. But I also want to be sure that we're not, that we're thinking deliberately that we're using the money to support as many people as we should be. And this is one really powerful way to do it. Are there other powerful, important ways to do it that we're not seeing? But I don't think that 20,000 would make us not able to support other organizations. I just want to do it, take a step back and look at the whole need rather than just who knew about it and was able to come to the meeting. But I don't know that there's
And we
other.
can do that during budget season.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to
This is
use
not
this.
This is not a final decision.
Right. I just want to use this as a point
Well,
for that.
I'll take a step back. I made my proposal, let you guys
What
hash
do you
this
guys
out.
think?
Okay, I guess where I'm being the accountant, the
Yeah, please.
nerd here, I always look at this, the budget that we had, and the DB fund is the one that we're going into appropriated fund balance on. So is there any way we can avoid going into an appropriated fund balance?
So putting the money into DB.
Somehow, but I don't know what, I mean, I'm just looking at numbers. I'm not, because I don't understand, as well as you do, Mike,
If you
how
look at
that
the
is.
supervisory report at the end of the year, the DA was the Achilles heel.
Was it? Okay.
That was the one that we were really close to zero.
Okay.
We had to void that out from the A fund. My personal opinion is that's where you need to do that, because we had an excellent year last year with the DB.
Okay.
And that's where I think we need to look at putting it in the DA fund, because that takes the definite load right off the taxpayers directly.
All right. I thought, I had to ask.
Yeah.
Because that has bothered me ever since we did the budget.
On
Yeah.
the DA side, remember I asked for about 70,000 helping get to the payroll
Okay.
for last winter,
Right.
right? I was definitely hurting in my DA account for winter.
That'll strengthen that position.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
DB seems to be, okay so far. So
Okay, good. That's all I want to know. Thank you.
Well, we we will keep praying. Yeah, you know, when it's 30 degrees out, you gotta spread the same amount of salt as if it's, unfortunately, right?
So I'm curious, Ruth and Joe, what you're thinking about the division giving about 20,000 to the food pantry and then the rest to this?
I'm fine with the food pantry.
I'm fine with the food pantry too, but I feel a little uncomfortable having one group come forward at the last minute without opening it up to the whole community and saying, if we have 20,000 or 40,000, how would you spend it? Which is what other communities did with their ARPA funds. And
Right.
so I'd feel more comfortable if we said, let's take 50,000 and turn to our community and say, how would you spend this? And have them come to us with ideas and then give it out based on those ideas, as opposed to last
Yeah.
minute, here's, you know, because the food pantry does wonderful things.
Right.
But that's what I would like to see, is something more on that line, because I think, you know, though the food pantry is a wonderful idea, what else out there
Right, what
deserves
do we not
funding?
even know about that's
Right.
doing amazing work out there? Yeah, yeah.
And you can earmark that next year at the budget time.
Mhm.
If you want to allocate that, earmark a certain amount of pot of money for charities.
Mhm.
You can decide what that amount will be. I mean, she has come to us today, I mean, she's made the effort.
Mhm.
And the other charities need to actually do the same thing.
But they need to know the availability, and I'm not sure they did.
Well, and that's okay, this is a process, right? This is a process as we go forward, just like when the library did that, and Guy has a comment.
So, just be careful with the word charities,
Yeah,
because
that runs
because it's public money,
Yeah.
right? And so what is a lawful use of public money? Well, there are certain charitable supports that you're allowed to expend on, and then there are others that you can expend on only if there's, I hate to use a word that was so misunderstood nationally, but quid pro quo. You have to get something of value for it. So when it's support for the quote-unquote needy, which is the term that's referenced in the Constitution, the New York State Constitution, you generally have rather plenary authority to provide some support with public money. But if it's, you know, if it's a charity that tends to the care of sick horses, as laudable as that goal may be, that doesn't really serve
Probably
the
not
public
the
generally.
public purpose, right?
So you have to be careful when you say charities, it's a loaded word. That's the
In
only
so
thing
many
I'm
ways.
saying. The food pantry, gadabout, senior citizen support, those are all things that are generally community-wide support and support for the needy or disabled or people who can't drive anymore. They fall into that section 1 exception of Article 8
Food
pretty
net is
well.
another one we do.
Right.
Yes,
Food
yeah,
net.
food
Yeah,
net.
Meals
Yeah.
on Wheels is something that the
Yeah.
town
Yeah,
has
food
supports.
net, gadabout.
So just be careful with
Right.
the word charity generally, because what you're looking for is something that benefits the public,
Right.
including the theory originally behind needy, supporting needy people, is the government would be doing that anyway, so by supporting a charity, you're simply offsetting one expense for another, and the reality is a lot of private foundations can take a dollar a lot farther than can a government.
Right.
Because they don't have a lot of the regulatory controls and oversight that a government has. So just be careful with the word charities, that's all I wanted to throw out there, just so you don't cross the wrong bridge.
So this seems to be a unique situation, because we can move the ARPA money around, as opposed to the rest. We don't want to set a precedent, because then you're gonna have every charity here. Why don't we just agree on 10,000 to go to the food pantry, and then tap the brakes, and then we discuss what our charities are. We do it for the food now, we do it for Gadabout, we do it for
Meals on
whatever.
Wheels, yeah.
Come up
Right.
with-
It'd be
come up
nice to-
with a protocol, of what fits
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
If you agree on 10,000, move on, and then the rest will dump into the pot for the salt, and then you guys can play with the money afterwards, because then you have that money protected, okay?
Okay, I can live with that.
Yeah, that sounds good to me, and we can come up with sort of a minimal procedure for asking
So it checks the
organizations to
boxes,
come
so
to
you
us.
say, this is the reason we do it for this.
Exactly.
We did the same thing with the flag policy. Here's the whole list of
Right.
those that are allowed, right?
Right, right, so we're not just like, oh, because I like them.
Because we had a moment of passion here, right? Right. No, because we also, because next year when you do this, you'll be looking at taxpayers' money,
Yeah.
right? This is really, it is taxpayers' money, really. I mean, we're going to go, it is our money, it just finally circle back.
Roundabout.
So we're in agreement maybe for 10,000 on that, and we'll see you at budget time also.
Yeah.
So So we'll have that discussion then, and we'll come up with a checklist protocol of what our nonprofits are that we could do that, and see which ones check the boxes. The rest, I'm paraphrasing here, I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth, we'll dump into the DA fund, and that surplus will eventually collapse into the praying that we don't have the record storm in November,
Right.
December.
It'll collapse unless
That'll
it's
collapse
needed.
back into
Yeah.
to the fund balance of the DA. That'll strengthen that fund. That's one of the reasons we haven't raised the taxes, unfortunately. And then the next board next year can decide how they want to move stuff around.
We're not dumping it into the DA fund, we're buying salt with it, because we're,
That's fine. I'm fine with those semantics. I'm happy with as long as we get.
Guy,
Yeah, it's not actually semantics, because if you're just
It's what
putting it
we're
into a
doing.
fund and it's not used, then you run into the reserve fund rules.
Right, we have to
So-
buy the salt with it.
I
yeah.
think probably shorthand would have been a better word than semantics, but
Yes.
that's getting semantics.
Yes, yes. I'm trying to get the reused condensed version, not to be at 8 o'clock tonight. Yes.
Yes.
Here we are.
so Guy, can you help me with the language of a resolution that will commit,
Accomplish those two goals?
yes,
Yeah, well,
With the verbiage.
I'll start trying to write something down and.
Thank
get
you
it
very
through my
much.
head, And then I'll read it to you, and if it makes sense, you'll let me know.
thank you.
Okay. And if it doesn't make sense. I'm
We'll
sure
also
you'll
let you know.
but-
Should we?
I'll
There
just
is
give
a,
it-
there is a resolution also that I now have.
Oh,
You were
Want to
asking,
move
you were
on
asking me
while Guys
earlier.
do
Yeah.
this, then we can circle back.
Sure.
surprise resolutions. So exciting.
Oh, wait, there's more. And we need to go into executive session.
Yes.
Here, Bronwyn.
He's just teasing me.
Sorry.
Plastic woman.
The ink's still, or at least it's still warm from the printer on this. This was right off the press. Some background information?
I basically had a situation arise within my department where I need to hire a part-time person that carries the CDL to bridge the gap.
And he's worked for us
He's
before.
worked for us, he worked in 2016 for us. He said he worked 3 days a week for us at this point in time.
To help replace the person that was on disability for a little while, right? Because of he had to have, oh, sorry.
Yep,
Okay,
just to help bridge the gap, right?
okay. We'll leave it at that.
Yep.
Well, you've hired part-time people in the past.
We have, and it's within my budget, it's within
Yeah.
the roster and everything else, it's just the pay is different than what it once was when we were 2016, so it's coming before the board to agree to that.
But this guy can hit the floor running,
100%.
just like Nolan did.
Yep, come in, drive truck for us, and,
Okay,
right? Yeah, well, you met him when we did the Drake Road water line, right?
yeah,
You-
yeah, he's excellent.
Yep,
And he's willing to help,
yes.
especially when there's such a shortage.
Right, and it honestly was short notice, right? This kind of came about really fast for me, so.
Okay.
So Debbie, would it be better for us to wait till Guy finishes his thing for you in your work, or just do this and then
Yeah,
go?
we're kind of jumping all over here.
I hear your pain.
We can do this, I think,
Okay.
since you just
I'll move it.
received it, I would think you'd want to make sure everybody's read it, but,
I just read it.
okay. Okay.
I'm
so
just asking what's going to be easiest for you.
It's fine, and then we'll just go back to do the other resolution.
Okay.
I'll figure it out. Okay, so Bronwyn is moving in,
Sure.
okay.
I'll second it.
Well, he buzzed in. Okay, any further discussion? Mrs. Munson?
Ruth Groff,
Yes.
Bronwyn Losi,
Yes.
Joseph Wetmore,
Yes.
Edward Levine.
Yes. Okay. Any more motions or resolutions?
Oh, there's one Guy's working on.
That's the only one I'm aware of.
We can wait a moment. Pat's gonna hire somebody, but that's within his budget. He has all the paperwork. She starts Monday, hooray, hooray. Onward and upward, right?
Let's hope.
Sidewalk looks wonderful, the wall is wonderful. We all did it within the scope of what we do here, right?
Yes, yeah.
Well, we hired that one gentleman who's a mason, and he's teaching other crew how to do it, so I think it's.
Our scope keeps growing.
Yeah, well, we're a growing town because we have services and we want to give value.
Hey, Mike, what was that line item, dot 400?
Yes.
DA 5142.
5142, thank you.
When you use it every day,
Read
it's.
something.
It's
all right.
easy, right?
Okay.
Hit it.
I think it's
Guys
very-
ready?
Motion by blank, whoever's going to move it, subject to existing allocations to allocate balance of ARPA funds, approximately $201,957. That, as follows: A, $10,000 to the Lansing Food Pantry, assuming that's the correct name, to offset low inventories and increase demand, and B, $191,957 into DA fund line DA 5142.400 to purchase roast salt under state bid contract for winter of 2023-2024. In the event any fund balance remains in the ARPA budget line, the same shall be allocated to item B above, subject to any ongoing current encumbrances for such fund.
You want to
I'll
move, Joe?
move it.
Hey, we're-
Both of you, whatever, because this is your baby.
I'll get it to you in a legible form.
Okay.
All right, so we have a
Now you're talking fancy.
first and a second. Any further discussion?
Well, who was the first? Joe?
Sure, I did.
Ruth out of character.
Ruth, okay.
Switch it up once in a while.
Throw me a curve on that one. I was-
And Joe, were you the second?
Yes. It shouldn't surprise you, Ed, we're the ones that asked for the meeting.
Well, I give you the, out of courtesy, right, since this was the impetus, the least we could do is let you guys do that.
Is there any further discussion before we call it?
Nope, Ms.
No.
Munson?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Anyone opposed?
And there you go. And see us in maybe July or August when we start our budget discussion already.
Yes.
Right, okay? All right.
Does she need to send an invoice, or how does that work?
I'm not the bookkeeper. Don't look at me.
We'll talk to Jen and figure out what the,
The procedure.
yeah, what the procedure is on that,
I
okay?
think in the past, we've actually just gone off of the resolutions that have passed.
Yeah, just
I'm not sure if
cut the check
everybody's
and
had to
send
send
it.
that in, but that's not my department.
Because it's not really an invoice for a service.
I just want her to know what she needs to
Right,
do,
like
if
if you
anything.
do, right. Excellent.
Give us a call next week.
Because we had some questions at Community Science Foundation over how that
Right,
works.
yeah, exactly.
Thank you. Oh, moving on. We got that done, good work. I want to move into executive session.
For sure.
Let me just look at the new one that Joe gave me.
No, fancy new cards.
This is.
New cards, they're 4 years old.
Guy, you're going to help me out with this maybe a little bit. I don't know if this is information relating to a current or future investigation or prosecution of a criminal offense. Could be proposed or pending or current litigation.
Well.
No, I'm sorry, matters which imperil safety if disclosed. How's that?
I'm not 100% sure I know the subject matter, but does it have to do with this email in the packet?
Yes.
And
Then yes, you could go with public safety, or you could just do closed session for advice of counsel.
I really go to closed session for advice and counsel.
And do we want to discuss this now, or is this going to be?
I think we should do a quick discussion on it.
Okay, so what does that put us? What, that would be executive session for,
Are we talking about the same thing?
no?
No, she pointed a piece of paper, different piece of paper.
this stuff.
So you're talking about the meeting we
Yeah,
had with,
yeah.
Yeah,
we could do that also in closed session
Okay,
for
sure.
advice.
All right,
Okay.
Perfect.
We got 2 closed sessions for advice.
do we need any of these people with us?
I think you're free to go, and
Sweet.
Thank you.
got 197,000 reasons to be happy today,
There you
huh? Thank you. Thank you, Jen.
Thanks. So you're moving to go to
I'm going to
closed
go
session?
executive session.
I'll
Or
second.
Closed
excuse
session,
me.
I'll
for
second.
advice of counsel. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I need a second.
Joe seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Okay, so let's go in closed session.